Hello everyone, and welcome back to this YouTube video for Guild Wars 2. So you might remember that I did my Harbinger redesign a couple days ago, maybe even weeks ago at this point, and I had mentioned that I was going to do one for the Willbender and the Virtuoso, and today is the day. It is finally upon us. I'm finally getting around to it, and I'm really excited. I'm going to start with the Virtuoso first, because I have more to say about the Willbender, so I might as well get the Virtuoso out of the way. So let's begin and talk about one of the core traits that I would like to see changed, at least. This being Illusionary Inspiration in the Inspiration trait line. This currently heals allies when you summon an illusion. It doesn't seem to work with blades, so I've just added the fact that stocking blades activates this skill as well. It's a little bit more supportive if you want to maybe build with a support playstyle for Virtuoso. I think that'd be really cool. So that was the first thing I went to. Next, we're going into the dagger for the Virtuoso itself. So Flying Cutter, I've added the tip that it can now activate on downed bodies. During the beta, the flurry mechanic did not activate on a downed player or any downed enemies out in the open world, and it was really weird. I hope it was just a bug. So next we have Blade Call. Conjure daggers to hone in on your enemy, which then return to you. Stock a blade if this attack hits at least one target, and stock another blade on the way back. This allows this skill to generate 2 blades instead of just 1, considering that other weapons such as Scepter and Greatsword have a little bit more consistent blade generation. Of course, Scepter only capped out at 3 blade generation, so that could be something to look out as well. And next we have Thousand Cuts, the elite for the Virtuoso. I have decided to make this an ammunition skill. So now this holds 2 charges. Its Emma recharges 75 seconds, its current cooldown, but it has a 1-second cast time, and every 20 seconds you can use another 1,000 cuts. I want this to be spaced out a little bit so that you don't have to just spam it continuously, but you will have another charge of 1,000 cuts to use it just in case you want to get a better positioning or you find a better positioning. This could be nice in terms of its usability, or, you know, you could always just lower the cooldown to like a 50-second elite. That could be maybe a little bit easier. We're gonna go into the F2 Blade Song. I have renamed this and changed it because I think that the confusion is just so consistent. It's on all of the Mesmer elite specs right now, and I don't think confusion necessarily needs to be on this spec. It's not really a Condi spec, so I've renamed it to Blade Song Staccato. Fire a volley of blades, granting you fury for each successful strike. This blade song will be a fury generator for yourself. I noticed that while the Virtuoso has a lot of traits that interact with Fury, there aren't many ways to gain guaranteed Fury application other than one psionic utility skill. So having it on a blade song could be quite useful, and it's only half a second, and if you have 5 blades, that's around like 3 seconds of Fury uptime, and of course like your concentration can affect that as well. But I also think the name is cool. Staccato, it's more musical. Now let's head into the traits. First trait, Mental Focus. I've alluded to this before in many videos, but deal bonus strike damage based on your distance to the enemy. This now functions similar to Dragon Hunters or Purified, where you have a minimum damage bonus of 7% and a maximum of 15%. This is PvE parameters as well. I could see in PvP this being a 5 to 10%, just so it's not super awful to play against maybe. And so next, the traits that I'm going to be looking at are all of the 3 bottom tiers. I have to admit, I still don't have a solid idea of what I would want for the bottom tier, but these were kind of just spitballing ideas, which I think are maybe a little bit more useful and interesting than the current bottom tier that's focused on the bleeding condition. So first and foremost, Psychic Reverb. For each blade you have on yourself, reduce condition damage. For each blade you use, reduce remaining condition duration on yourself and allies. So this trait has a dual feature and sets you in a dual mindset. Do I want to hold on to my stocked blades to gain reduced condition damage, or do I want to spend my blades to chunk down the remaining condition duration on myself and allies? I love this idea that you're not just getting rid of conditions. While that might be really powerful, this is a minor trait, or this is an adept trait. So instead of just completely getting rid of conditions, it now chunks down remaining duration. And depending on the build, you could be gaining a lot of blades over time. So this is a reduction of a condition for 1 second per blade. So maximum you could cut your remaining condition duration on yourself and your allies by 5 seconds each interval, depending on how quickly you generate everything. So yeah. Next, we have psionic affinity. Allies in the area of psionic abilities, these are your utility skills, or when hit by psionic projectiles, gain fury. Granting an ally fury extends the duration of your own fury. So this now focuses and promotes a player to use your psionic abilities if you want to use them. So this will be 2 seconds of fury for each instance of this activation on an ally. This activates in the area of like Rain of Swords, in the Sword of Decimation. If you are throwing a projectile, say with your healing skill or with your elite, if allies are hit by those projectiles, they will also gain fury. Now, if you are granting fury to allies, you'll be able to extend your own fury by a half second. So total, if you keep that consistent, you can gain like 3 seconds of fury pretty quickly and extending that by 3 seconds pretty actively. And next up we have the Grandmaster. This is the bottom Grandmaster, and it's been a little bit more enhanced and changed. Vital Song. Blade Turn Requiem, the F4, no longer deals damage, but creates a spell area which prevents conditions from being applied to yourself and allies, and will heal for each condition that would have been placed. So now you also will gain a blade when you heal an ally. I do think that the heal or the gain a blade when you heal an ally should have an internal cooldown of maybe like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, something like that. I realized after I made that, I was like, oh, I do not have an internal cooldown. Or maybe I do, cooldown 1 second. I think that could be bumped up to 2 seconds maybe. But Blade Turn Requiem now functions a little bit differently. It now will be a placeable spell area where you'll still gain the block, but instead of having those spinning daggers around you, this now plays into that condition mitigation playstyle that we were kind of seeing on the Adept. So this creates a 300 radius area where conditions cannot be applied to you or your allies if you're standing in it. You can place it at a range of 1200 with a radius of 300, and you will generate a blade on a heal. And of course, you have the other situations where the cooldown is increased, where you use a blade. Next, we have some of the other Grandmasters. We have Infinite Forge. Automatically stock blades while below the minimum blade count. So 3, you'll gain 3 blades over 9 seconds. But additionally, you can increase your maximum stocked blade count by 1. So now you can stock 6 blades instead of just having 5. You have Psychic Riposte. Blocking or dodging an attack stocks a blade. This is also a little bit more interesting. Successful blocks or dodges create a spell symbol in front of you, firing blades at your target when you attack. This allows you to have a little bit more control over that firing of a blade mechanic that is currently on Psychic Riposte. And additionally, you can only have 1 spell symbol up at a time. I took inspiration from the actual spell symbols, and perhaps you would call them mandala symbols, when virtuosos cast their blade songs, and you can kind of see them on some of the psionic utility skills. They have a beautiful animation and a beautiful art. So if you successfully block or dodge, one of them will be summoned right in front of you, and it would also give the enemy a visualization of that is currently up, and that's something I can dodge and react to, rather than just a blade automatically firing when you block or dodge. And this would last for 6 seconds. It has an attack interval of 1 second, so if you're continually attacking, you'll get 6 hits off. So that was my Virtuoso ideas. Now we're going to go head over and talk about the Willbender. So for the Virtuoso, I wanted to focus on some refinements and maybe a bottom trait line overhaul. But now for the Willbender, there is more to get into in terms of possible redesigns. So for the Willbender, I looked at the other Guardian Elite specs and the Guardian as a core class. It focuses on Aegis, so I wanted to incorporate some unblockable effects on the Willbender. So Willbenders, while they were once really attuned to Aegis, they now have learned to pierce through it and become really honed in and strike the enemy quickly, powerfully, and get through those magical defenses because they themselves were once, and somewhat are, masters at that magical defense. See some more unblockable aspects, you'll see a couple trait refinements, and you'll see some attention to bigger damage. So first and foremost, let's talk about the virtues. Rushing justice. Rush toward your target and gain justice, delivering a strike and emanating Willbender flames. Instead of this passive just applying a burn ability, consecutive attacks apply additional strikes, and also grant a stack of unblockable for 5 seconds. I didn't actually note this on any of the justice or any of the virtues. Currently, the virtues would activate after 5 hits. I think that's actually too high for the Willbender. 2 passives should be able to trigger on like 3 strikes. I think that might be a little bit better instead of having to wait till 5 strikes to get any effect out of it, because sometimes it can be hard to land those hits right now. So instead of burning, you're now going to be doing an additional strike after 3 attacks, and also grant you a stack of unblockable for 5 seconds just to maintain that attacking cadence. As well, I also increased the range to 500. Similarly, with Flowing Resolve, I've increased the range to 500, and the Willbender Flame is slightly wider, just ever so. Next, let's talk about the Sword 4, Executioner's Calling. Strike your foe with crippling force. After a successful hit, follow up this attack with a dual strike. I upped the damage a little bit on the initial strike, and I added the cripple condition because I've noticed that people and enemies can get away very quickly. So having that slight cripple aspect could help you maintain in melee range just a little bit longer. In PvP, this could just be a second of cripple, or even a half a second as well. The secondary attack, the damage was increased. So now let's jump into the utility skills. Now, there aren't super wide sweeping changes, but I did want to give them some attention just to kind of boost them up a little bit. So Reversal of Fortune, I kept all the text, but cleanse 1 condition and flip it to might. So when you successfully block an attack, you will now also flip 1 condition to 1 might for 5 seconds. This isn't super powerful, but it is a little bit of an extra boost that I think Reversal of Fortune needs, as well as I also increased the healing when you are attacked to 5,000 and a heal when you're not attacked to 2,000. I increased the healing when not attacked to 2,500. And now Flash Combo, I just increased the damage to a flat rate of 1,000. I think it's needed because you do have to successfully hit 5 attacks to also gain access to Repose. Repose is actually a little bit more useful. The Shadow Step is already really nice for getting out, but it also will now grant you 3 stacks of unblockable for 6 seconds. This will now allow you to get out, gain a little bit of a buff, you precast into your next fight. I know there was a whole debacle right now with the precasting. I know this isn't precasting, but it will set you up for a fight, for you to then Shadow Step or port onto an enemy, and you already have 3 seconds of unblockable to maintain that longer fight duration. Next, we have Heal Crack. Heal Crack is useful, but I feel like it could use a little bit of an extra added feature. And of course, with the Willbender in my redesign, we're going with that unblockable effect. So now on a successful stun, you will grant 2 stacks of unblockable for 5 seconds. Next, Whirling Light. I think it'd be nice if they added a quick quarter of a second evade on the startup. I think stability on this ability would be a little bit too strong, so just adding a little evade could be nice. And finally, Heaven's Palm. Heaven's Palm in PvP is really lovely. It feels like a very PvP focused elite skill. So I wanted to add a little bit more to this. Now, a successful knockdown empowers you with 3 might for 6 seconds and 10 stacks of unblockable for 6 seconds. This still is a little bit PvP focused, but if you want to use it in PvE, I could see like if you successfully knock someone down, you gain like 5-10 stacks of might for 5-6 seconds, something like that. Now let's talk about the traits. We have Holy Reckoning. Willbender Flames inflict increased damage and heal when they hit an enemy. This is by 40% increased damage. I upped the damage percentage and increased the heal to a standard 300. This will make it feel a little bit more powerful and a little bit more worthwhile. Next, Conceded Curate. Outgoing healing potency is reduced, but healing power is increased. This is very weak right now. It's like 240, so I upped the healing power to 360, but healing to others has been chopped to 40% instead of just like 33%, I think it was at, or something like that. So it's even less healing to others, which I think is fine for the Willbender because you're not going to be healing anyway, so. Next, we have the Grandmasters. So currently the Grandmasters in the beta iteration had drawbacks to themselves as well. But I actually think that there were enough drawbacks on the adept traits. I don't think Grandmasters usually need them. Sometimes I can see where you would need to have a drawback, but for the most part, with Willbender, it felt very strange. So first and foremost, we have Phoenix Protocol. Willbender Flames and Resolve's passive effect grant you Alacrity. Right now, it's just Resolve's passive effect that triggers every 5 hits. It's kind of difficult to get use out of, especially in PvP, so I streamlined this. Willbender Flames are much more useful if you take this trait. It would allow you to kind of get more use out of those flames as well. So the Alacrity on the flames would be half a second, just to kind of have like a rolling minor Alacrity boost. The Willbender Flames already activate on a slow interval, so you're not going to be getting like maximum stack, maximum duration of Alacrity anytime soon with the Willbender Flames. It's more so just a more consistent slight uptick in Alacrity. But additionally, the Alacrity on Resolve is now a second and a half. I think that could be the same as well. And Resolve's duration has been increased by 2 seconds. I got rid of it no longer heals. It now just applies regen and Alacrity. I got rid of that. I streamlined this trait. I think this would feel a lot better overall. So next we have Tyrant's Momentum. Lethal Tempo grants increased damage, and Justice's duration is increased. When Unblockable activates, gain Might. So we're now starting to see a Grandmaster trait that kind of touches base on the Unblockable effect. But I got rid of the reduced duration on the Justice, or the reduced duration on the Lethal Tempo. I don't think it's needed. It can already be sometimes a little difficult to get, but of course when you lower the activation on the passive effect to 3 attacks instead of 5, that could also help a little bit. But the damage increased by 2%, lethal tempo is now a maximum of 5%, the justice duration has been increased by 2 seconds, and now you gain 2 might for 5 seconds when Unblockable successfully activates and does what it should do. Next, Deathless Courage. Killing a foe extends the duration of Courage up to a maximum duration, you cannot be downed. Courage no longer grants Aegis, but grants stacks of Unblockable. So we had one Grandmaster that focuses on you already having that Unblockable and gaining use out of that. Deathless Courage, while it also allows you to not be killed, it now grants you unblockable effects, so you can now gain a more consistent killing streak. So the courage increase per kill is 2 seconds, the maximum allowed increase is 4 seconds. I got rid of that reduced courage duration. I also think that was kind of weird. In World versus World, I could still see that actually being a thing because I understand there are more enemies around, but in PvP and PvE, I don't think that reduced courage duration is actually needed. So this will also just maintain a little bit more strikes, more successful strikes if you're fighting enemies with Aegis, so you can actually get use out of this trait to kind of be that consistent brute force on the battlefield with 1 health, but you're still doing a lot of damage and you're still getting those hits. So everyone, thank you so much for coming and watching this little redesign of the Virtuoso and the Willbender. Overall, Virtuoso, I think the bottom trait line is really something that I'm focusing on in terms of I want to see if they do things with it, if they adjust it. And of course with the Willbender, I think it just needs a little bit more of a tuning up and a little bit more through line. So I focused in on those Grandmasters no longer giving you drawbacks, increasing and ironing out some of the functionality with those Grandmasters, and also adding a more consistent through line of the unblockable effect to really punish Aegis and other guardians like Firebrand and Dragon Hunters, and even some Mesmers who have like pretty decent application of Aegis. And you never know, with the rest and remaining elite specializations, we could see some elite specs granting more Aegis. So you never know, Aegis could be more applicable. But thank you everyone so much for coming. Like the video if you liked it, comment below your thoughts about the Virtuoso and the Willbender. You don't have to comment on my ideas, you can comment on your own ideas that you would love to see. And subscribe if you would like, I truly appreciate it. Also, if you'd like to help support the channel, I do have a Patreon where you get early access to videos, exclusive Discord, and some exclusive videos going out. Thank you everyone, and I also stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everyone!